The Ballon d'Or is widely considered to be the most prestigious individual award in all of world football. Historically, the Ballon d'Or was reserved only for Europeans, commonly referred to as the European Footballer of the Year award, but in 1995 it was opened up to players from anywhere in the world, so long as they were playing in Europe. And in 2007, by which stage all of the best players were already playing in Europe, thus rendering it entirely pointless, it was opened up to players playing anywhere on the planet. By my count, 45 players have won the 66 Ballon d'Ors to have been awarded since 1956, with the 10 multiple Ballon d'Or winners having won a total of 31 Ballon d'Ors between them. I have, repeatedly over the years, been asked to try and rank them from worst to best, and I've actually planned this video twice in the past before deciding not to go ahead with it. Still, the requests kept flooding in though, including this one from Connor recently, which got over 300 likes, so if I have any hope at all of retaining my reputation as the People's Channel, I decided that I'd best bite the bullet and finally go for it. My prior reluctance was twofold because there are loads of them, so I knew that this would take ages, and because they are all brilliant footballers. Obviously, they won the Ballon d'Or, so labelling any of them as the worst, even if only the worst among elite competition, seems to be rather silly and cruel. So, before I begin, the obvious caveat here is that the worst Ballon d'Or winner is like being the worst physicist to have won a Nobel Prize or the ugliest person cast as the lead woman in a James Bond film. Chances are, you're still doing alright. And to keep this video from being about 5 hours long, I am going to barely say anything about some of the greatest players ever to have played the game, and literally almost nothing about a fair few of them. Without further ado then, here is my best attempt at ranking every Ballon d'Or winner from worst to best, based upon their talent and their entire careers, not solely the calendar year in which they won the Ballon d'Or, which you will no doubt strongly disagree with, and that's a good thing. 45th, Igor Belanov. Well, I'm afraid that someone has to take the wooden spoon, and in this case, it is Igor Belanov. Quite possibly the least remembered Ballon d'Or winner, at least outside of Ukraine, Belanov was a surprise winner in 1986, coming out ahead of World Cup Golden Boot winner Gary Lineker and Real Madrid's Emilio Butragueño. A tremendous athlete who could run the 50 metres in 5.7 seconds, a mere 0.3 seconds shy of the world record at that time, Belanov combined his speed with a ferocious shot, and in Valery Lobanovsky's very well-oiled machine at Dynamo Kiev, he was integral to their treble win in 1986, hence that Ballon d'Or. Without Lobanovsky's direction though, Belanov suffered a steep decline, struggling at Borussia Mönchengladbach following the end of the Cold War, and playing second-tier football in Germany, aged only 29, within 4 years of his Ballon d'Or crown. As good as he was for a brief period of time, performing a very specific role, Belanov is the right choice, I think, to get us started. 44th, Pavel Nedved. I promised you brevity, which you didn't get with my first inclusion, but you will do for the next few. Pavel Nedved was one of my favourite footballers growing up, actually improving the Juventus team with his stamina and skill after replacing Zinedine Zidane, so it feels like sacrilege to rank him this low. Tough calls are the order of the day though, so it is the 2003 winner, who prevented Thierry Henry from ever winning a Ballon d'Or, who becomes our second inclusion. 43rd, Matthias Sammer. Featured on this channel just a few days ago, in a video about footballers who defied the odds to become better players than their very talented fathers, Matthias Sammer became a better player than anyone in Europe in 1996, at least according to those with a vote, when he won the Ballon d'Or. A tremendous sweeper, who would improve almost any team on the planet in his prime, Sammer struggled with injuries throughout much of his career, and he was sadly forced to retire from football at the age of 31. 42nd, George Weah. The first and still the only African international to win the Ballon d'Or, and the only player in this list who is now the president of an actual country, Weah won the Ballon d'Or a year before Sammer, in 1995, which was the same year in which he left PSG following a third-place finish in Ligue 1 to sign for AC Milan. Weah was a brilliant all-round forward who left a huge impression on the sport and influenced so many forwards who followed, but I couldn't quite justify ranking him ahead of the man up next. 41st, Paolo Rossi. One of several football legends to have left us in recent years, Paolo Rossi is an icon of Italian football, having led Italy to their first post-war World Cup crown in 1982, where he won both the Golden Boot and the Golden Ball. An opportunistic centre-forward with underrated ability on the ball, Rossi scored 24 goals in 30 games for Spezia in the 1977-78 season, at a time when scoring goals in Serie A was notoriously difficult. 40th, Alan Simonsen. The only Ballon d'Or winner, I think I'm right in saying, ever to have played for Charlton Athletic, Alan Simonsen turned down offers from Real Madrid and Tottenham Hotspur to play for the Addicts, where he bagged 9 goals in just 16 games before leaving the club because they couldn't afford to pay him. Who'd have thought it? A brilliant diminutive marksman who had lightning acceleration and equally quick feet, Simonsen spent his best years at Borussia Mönchengladbach and at Barcelona, where he was replaced by none other than Diego Maradona, and he won the Ballon d'Or in 1977, in addition to finishing third in 1983. 39th, Michael Owen. Much maligned these days, the reality is that, were it not for injuries, Michael Owen would probably have gone down as England's greatest player of all time. One of the most explosive teenagers to have ever played the sport, Owen was actually already past his best when he won the Ballon d'Or in 2001, despite being only aged 21. He won back-to-back Premier League Golden Boots in his teens, he was unstoppable at his best, and he would be England's all-time record goal scorer by miles if it weren't for the fact that his muscles ripped easier than tissue paper. I can only rank him on talent and the career that he actually had though, rather than the one that he could have had, hence his spot in 39th. 38th, Fabio Cannavaro. This will seem like sacrilege to some people, but I do feel as though Fabio Cannavaro is a teeny weeny bit overrated. He was absolutely world-class for a very long time, make no mistake, and he was faultless for Italy as he captained them to World Cup glory in 2006. The fact that he played so well at that World Cup though, and became a very rare centre-back to win a Ballon d'Or, means that Cannavaro is sometimes cited as being one of the greatest defenders of all time when even just contemporary Italians like Paolo Maldini and Alessandro Nesta were both better than him, in my eyes at least. Nonetheless, he was an absolute class act, and 38th feels just about right. 37th, Jean-Pierre Papin. One of the greatest French footballers of all time, Jean-Pierre Papin was unfortunate to have only just broken into the France team for the 1986 World Cup, when they had a really strong squad, and to have finished playing international football shortly before their 1998 World Cup win. At club level, he topped the Ligue 1 scoring charts in 5 separate seasons, and he won the Ballon d'Or in 1991, a year in which he scored 36 goals in 50 games to fire Marseille through to the final of the European Cup. 36th, Florian Albert. It is difficult to rank Florian Albert by virtue of the fact that he only ever played for Ferencváros at a time when Hungarian football was still very competitive, but nowhere near as good as it had been prior to the country's 1956 uprising. Albert proved his class beyond any doubt on the international stage though, becoming the joint highest scorer at the 1962 World Cup when he was just 20 years old. As elegant as they come in terms of out-and-out centre-forwards, Albert won the Ballon d'Or in 1967, ahead of British duo Jimmy Johnston and Bobby Charlton, after scoring 28 goals in 27 games for Ferencváros. 35th, Kevin Keegan. The lowest ranked player to have won more than one Ballon d'Or, Kevin Keegan won consecutive European Player of the Year awards while starring for Hamburg in 1978 and 1979. A powerful, gifted and explosive centre-forward, Keegan began his career at Scunthorpe United, became a star at Liverpool, and even holds legendary status at both Southampton and Newcastle, his last two clubs, where he spent just 2 seasons, but was more prolific than he had been at any other clubs. 34th, Karim Benzema. The most recent recipient of the Ballon d'Or, Karim Benzema was for so long the bridesmaid at Real Madrid, but he has really stepped up to become their main man ever since Cristiano Ronaldo's departure. There have been few players in history good enough, or at least willing enough, to do both the donkey work and be the talisman at various different stages as Benzema has done, and it is frightening to think how many goals Benzema could have scored had he always been the star. His consistency, contribution, success and longevity all earn him a spot in 34th, but on sheer talent, I couldn't justify putting him ahead of the man up next. 33rd, Andrei Shevchenko. Don't be blinded by Andrei Shevchenko's short and fairly disappointing stint at Chelsea. At a time when goals in Serie A were hard to come by, Andrei Shevchenko scored them for fun. Made in Kiev and perfected in Milan, Shevchenko won the Ballon d'Or ahead of Deco and Ronaldinho in 2004, having previously made the podium in both 1999 and in the year 2000. 32nd, Hristo Stoichkov. Again, it was sheer talent that meant I had to rank Hristo Stoichkov over the man who preceded him, and few players in history have had as much ability as the beguiling Bulgarian. A creative second striker who played his very best football in a withdrawn role, Stoichkov scored 47 goals in just 38 games in his last season at CSKA Sofia, before starring alongside Romario in Johan Cruyff's dream team at Barcelona. Stoichkov won the Ballon d'Or in 1994 after winning the World Cup Golden Boot in the United States. 31st, Josip Masopust. I'm already taking too long in this video, so all I'll say is that Czechoslovakia legend Josip Masopust was one of the greatest midfielders of all time, and he is the first player in this list to have featured in my own video taking a look at the 100 greatest footballers of all time, which you are more than welcome to check out if you would like a bit more detail and depth about him and all of the players that follow. 30th, Kaká. It is near enough impossible to rank someone like Kaká, who was so quick, so elegant, and so deadly in transition at his majestic best, but didn't enjoy a peak that was as long as many of the others in this list. Ultimately, my conclusion is 30th, which does seem a little brutal until I name all of the players that feature in the 20s, and then it seems a little bit more reasonable. 29th, Denis Law. Arguably the greatest Scottish footballer of all time, and still the only Scot to have won the Ballon d'Or, Denis Law constituted 1/3 of the Holy Trinity of Best, Law and Charlton at Manchester United, all of whom, quite incredibly, won the Ballon d'Or. Good on the ball, dead-eyed in front of goal, and an absolute menace in the air, Law won the Ballon d'Or in 1964, following a season in which he scored 46 goals in only 42 games. 28th, Luka Modric. Propelling us right back into the present day, Luka Modric won the Ballon d'Or in 2018 after winning the Champions League with Real Madrid and inspiring Croatia all the way to a FIFA World Cup final. His performances at the 2022 World Cup, given that he is now 37 years old, were arguably even more impressive, and the energy, efficiency, and near faultless decision-making that he has shown for the past decade now has convinced me that Modric is comfortably one of the 10 best players of the 21st century. 27th, Rivaldo. At his absolute best, Rivaldo is one of the best footballers that I have ever seen, full stop. Big, powerful, skillful, inventive, and a real match winner, capable of taking any game at any level by the scruff of the neck. If he had been able to maintain the standard of his 20s into his 30s, as well as Luka Modric has, he'd probably have made my top 10. 26th, Luis Figo. At the end of this video, I cross-referenced the 31 highest ranked players with my 100 greatest players of all time video, and all ranked in pretty much, if not the exact same order, with the exception of Luis Figo, who I ranked much higher a few years ago. Don't ask me why that is the case, but Figo was a sensational footballer, the best in the world at the turn of the millennium, and great value for his Ballon d'Or win ahead of Zinedine Zidane and Andrei Shevchenko in the year 2000. 25th, Ole Blokhin. The highest scorer in the history of Dynamo Kiev, the Soviet Union, and the Soviet top league, you would imagine that at least two of those records are pretty safe for the foreseeable future, and there is no one more fitting to hold them than Ole Blokhin. Renowned for his speed, dribbling, and of course his goal scoring, Blokhin won the Ballon d'Or in 1975 ahead of Franz Beckenbauer and Johan Cruyff, so not bad competition. 24th, Ruud Gullit. One of the most complete players of the last 30 or 40 years, whether he was played in defence, midfield or in attack, Ruud Gullit was an absolute gem in every team that he graced. He was very much a forward when he won the Ballon d'Or in 1987, which was also the year that he left PSV to join AC Milan, where he went on to win 3 Serie A titles and 2 European Cups. Gullit was also a runner-up in 1988 Ballon d'Or voting, finishing behind his club and international teammate Marco van Basten. 23rd, Karl-Heinz Rummenigge. Our second 2-time Ballon d'Or winner, following Kevin Keegan, Karl-Heinz Rummenigge also won both of his Ballon d'Ors while starring in the Bundesliga, for Bayern Munich in his case. A winner in 1980 and in 1981, Rummenigge didn't even make the top 3 of voting in 1982, despite winning the silver shoe, the bronze ball, and making the team of the tournament, as Germany reached the final of the 1982 World Cup. 22nd, Raymond Kopa. The third recipient of the Ballon d'Or, Rem and Real Madrid legend Raymond Kopa reigned victorious following his starring role in Real Madrid's third successive European Cup win. A playmaking marvel renowned for his speed and close control, Kopa was a prolific creator and scorer of goals, and he finished third in 1956 and 1957 voting, second in 1959, and he won his Ballon d'Or in 1958. No player with only one Ballon d'Or win has made more podium appearances. 21st, Omar Savori. One of both Argentina and Italy's greatest players of all time, Omar Savori was a world-class forward who delighted in humiliating opponents and entertaining a crowd. He spent his best years playing for Juventus, and he won the 1961 Ballon d'Or after scoring 29 goals in 28 games in the 1960-61 campaign. 20th, Gianni Rivera. One of the most intelligent footballers ever to have laced up a pair of boots, Gianni Rivera, throughout his entire career, was similar to Lionel Messi now, walking around the pitch, seemingly just ambling about and doing nothing, before bursting into life in moments and winning games of football on his own. He won the Ballon d'Or in 1969, narrowly ahead of his compatriot Gigi Riva in second place and Gerd Müller in third. 19th, Roberto Baggio. There is a distinctly Italian feel to our last few inclusions, or at least Argentine-Italian in Savori's case, and there are those who would claim that Roberto Baggio is the greatest Italian footballer of all time. Endlessly skillful and inventive, Baggio was a star of the 1994 World Cup before blazing his penalty over the crossbar in the final to give Brazil a 4th World Cup crown. Had he dispatched from just 12 yards out, he may well have won a second successive Ballon d'Or in 94, having won his first in 1993. 18th, Luis Suarez. Not Luis Suarez of the Uruguayan variety, who never even made a Ballon d'Or podium appearance, despite scoring 59 goals in 53 games in the 2015-16 season. It was the Spanish Luis Suarez who spent his best years at Inter Milan, who not only won the Ballon d'Or in 1960, but finished second in 1961 and 1964, and third in 1965. An inside forward at Barcelona, where he won the Ballon d'Or, who was converted to a deep-lying playmaker. In the two-time European Cup winning Grande Inter team, Suarez is good value for a spot in 18th. 17th, Ronaldinho. A top 5 player of my lifetime, at least at the peak of his powers. Between 2002 and 2007, there was next to nothing that Ronaldinho couldn't do with a ball at his feet. A love of partying and only a fleeting interest in training meant that his peak wasn't as long as it could have been, and he won his only Ballon d'Or in 2005, having finished 3rd in 2004. 16th, Marco van Basten. One of only 5 players to have won 3 or more Ballon d'Ors, I don't think it's always fully appreciated quite how remarkable it is that he managed that despite being forced to retire from football after playing his final match at the age of 28. Van Basten was near enough the perfect centre-forward. Tall, elegant, athletic and clinical. His 3 Ballon d'Or wins came in 1988, 1989 and in 1992, though, somewhat surprisingly, he never finished 2nd or 3rd. 15th, Zinedine Zidane. Zinedine Zidane was my favourite player growing up, well, second only to Stuart Elliott, due to his combination of grace and athleticism, but I don't think that he is a genuine candidate when it comes to discussion surrounding who is the greatest player of all time, and I have made an entire video explaining why that is the case. Nonetheless, he is one of the finest footballers of the modern era. He won 1 Ballon d'Or in 1998, he finished 2nd and 3rd in 2000 and 1997, and he takes 15th in this list. The last of those, no doubt, being the greatest accomplishment of his career. 14th, Lothar Matthäus. A sheer class act, Lothar Matthäus went from lethal attacking midfielder in his early years to an unstoppable box-to-box force of nature at Inter Milan, and eventually a world-class midfield sitter, or even sweeper, back at Bayern Munich. In terms of talent, longevity, consistency and success, few can hold a candle to the German, who still looked world-class at the grand old age of 39 and won 150 caps for Germany. It's hard work winning a Ballon d'Or from central midfield, just as it is hard work recording a video like this with an absolutely atrocious cold, but that is exactly what Matthäus did in 1990, winning the Ballon d'Or that is, not recording this video, as well as coming 2nd in 1991. 13th, Stanley Matthews. The late great Pelé describes Stanley Matthews as being the man who taught the world how football should be played. And though his 1956 Ballon d'Or win, 3 points ahead of Alfredo Di Stefano, which made him the inaugural winner of the award at the age of 41, as a winger no less, may have been a Lifetime Achievement Award, as much as a recognition of his performances that calendar year alone. Matthews is one of the greatest footballers ever to have played the game. He went on to play for another 9 years after that, and famously commented that he regretted retiring at 50, as he still had another good couple of years left in him. 12th, Gerd Müller. Gerd Müller was the antithesis of someone like Marco van Basten, who looked like a perfectly formed centre-forward. Müller, by contrast, was short, squat, and far less graceful on the ball. He was deceptively quick though, particularly over very short distances. His anticipation and movement were unrivaled, and, above all else, he just loved scoring goals. There may never have been another footballer as blessed in that regard, and he won a thoroughly deserved Ballon d'Or in 1970, in addition to making the podium in 1969, 1972, and in 1973. 11th, George Best. There have been few more gifted players in the history of the sport than George Best, who was like Ronaldinho on steroids. Football came so easily to Best that he had effectively completed the sport by the age of 22 when he won his Ballon d'Or, having become the best player on the planet and won it all at Manchester United. Sadly, his career was effectively over at 27 due to alcoholism and other off-pitch issues, but his talent takes him up to 11th. 10th, Bobby Charlton. George Best's old comrade at Manchester United, Bobby Charlton is, in my view at least, the greatest English footballer of all time. Born with a ball at his feet, Charlton was the complete player, a brilliant athlete, capable of driving his team up the pitch, but also of scoring and creating goals at will. He used to say that he could never understand how anyone couldn't play football, that's how easy he found it, and he won the Ballon d'Or in 1966, after England won the World Cup, before finishing second in 1967 and in 1968. 9th, Eusebio. There have been few more frightening prospects for a defender to come up against in the history of world football than the great Eusebio. As fast as an Olympic sprinter, as powerful as an ox, as dainty as a ballerina with the ball at his feet, and as lethal as his contemporary Gerd Muller, no one ever found a solution to stop him when he was at his best. In 440 games for Benfica, Eusebio, who was born in Mozambique, scored 475 goals, and he was unfortunate to only win one Ballon d'Or in 1965, finishing second in 1962 and in 1966. 8th, Lev Yashin. The only goalkeeper to have won the Ballon d'Or, and still recognised today by most people as the greatest goalkeeper of all time, Lev Yashin transcended football and the tensions at the time between East and West. A huge presence, both on and off the pitch, who struck fear into centre forwards like no one else, Yashin revolutionised the sport, particularly in Europe, by coming off his line, organising his defence, and instigating attacks through his distribution. It is hard to compare him to 44 outfield players, but a top 10 finish is thoroughly deserved in my eyes. 7th, Michel Platini. Michel Platini won 3 successive Ballon d'Ors in 1983, 1984 and 1985, and then retired in 1987, aged only 31, entirely of his own volition. A classical number 10 who made scoring and creating goals look like the easiest thing in the world, Platini scored 25 or more goals from midfield in 10 out of his 14 seasons in the game. He is the greatest goal-scoring midfielder of all time and one of the finest players Europe has ever produced. 6th, Franz Beckenbauer. Into the top 6, and we are now talking about bona fide all-time greats. Franz Beckenbauer made 5 Ballon d'Or podium appearances, the joint most of anyone other than Messi and Ronaldo, and he won 2 in 1972 and 1976. Beckenbauer announced himself to the world as Germany's star man, playing in central midfield at the 1966 World Cup. He later moved into defence, becoming the greatest sweeper of all time and making the All-Star team at 2 further World Cups, including the 1974 World Cup, which Germany won. 5th, Ronaldo. If it weren't for injuries earlier on, I said that Michael Owen could have become England's greatest player of all time, and in Ronaldo Luis Nazario de Lima's case, had he not completely ruptured his kneecap tendons at the age of 23, he could have gone down as a top 3 player of all time. As a teenager, Ronaldo was unlike anything that the world had seen, at least since Pelé. Freakishly quick and strong, the ball appeared to be glued to his feet, and he was scoring a goal a game. He won the Ballon d'Or twice, once before his injury in 1997, and once after making a stunning comeback in 2002. In addition to finishing second in 1996, aged 20, and third in 1998. 4th, Johan Cruyff. It is an almost impossible decision, in my eyes at least, between the man in 4th, who found football so easy and influenced the game as much as anyone else in the last 100 years, and the man in 3rd, who had only a fraction of his talent but far greater longevity and success. I settle for Cruyff in 4th, as blasphemous as that may seem, who won the Ballon d'Or thrice in 1971, 1973 and 1974, as well as finishing 3rd in 1975. As a teenager, Cruyff averaged a goal a game at Ajax before dropping deeper and becoming the key exponent of total football, his and Rinus Michels' view of the way in which football should be played. 3rd, Cristiano Ronaldo. The second most successful player in the history of the Ballon d'Or, Cristiano Ronaldo has finished second in Ballon d'Or voting more times than anyone else, and first more times than everyone other than Lionel Messi. Ronaldo won his first Ballon d'Or in 2008, and his fifth, and what you would expect to be his last, in 2017, winning the award on all but one occasion during years in which his team had won the Champions League. A tremendous athlete, and one of the greatest goal scorers that the game has ever seen, Ronaldo recently signed for Al Nassr in Saudi Arabia, not South Africa. Second, Alfredo Di Stefano. Alfredo Di Stefano won the Ballon d'Or twice, but that is only because he was already 30 when the award was introduced, and there were some questions around whether he should be eligible to enter in 1956, when the first Ballon d'Or was held, not yet having been naturalised in Spain at the time. His two crowns then, which should have been at least 3 and easily could have been 4 from the age of 30 onwards alone, are a mark of the fact that Di Stefano is one of the greatest footballers of all time. Often described as the most complete player to have played the game, Di Stefano scored goals like Ronaldo, dictated matches like Modric, and beat players like Cruyff. A genius, and unfortunate, to only finish second. First, Lionel Messi. The greatest footballer to have won the Ballon d'Or, and the greatest player of all time alongside Pelé as far as I'm concerned, in addition to being one of the greatest assets of the despotic Saudi regime, Lionel Messi has won a record 7 Ballon d'Ors, and he is the favourite to win what would be an 8th in 2023. In my view, Messi should have won at least 10 Ballon d'Ors if the award did actually recognise the best footballer of the previous calendar year, as, it claims to, and I have a whole video about why it doesn't do that, and why it, along with almost all individual awards in football, are either completely meaningless, hideously corrupt, or both, which is well worth a watch if you've got a spare half an hour after this. Back on topic, it should be said, France Football did recognise a series of new or additional winners of the Ballon d'Or in 2016, in which they awarded Pelé with 7 Ballon d'Ors, Maradona with 2, and 3 other players with 1 apiece. But I didn't include them since they weren't official winners, and this video was already difficult enough. Messi takes top spot by virtue of being the best dribbler, passer of a ball, and goal scorer at least of my lifetime, as well as having near flawless decision making, both on and off the ball. I don't think that anyone has ever been as good at football as Messi, and certainly no one who has ever won the Ballon d'Or, so his place in top spot was always fairly assured. That is it for today's video. Thank you all very much as ever for watching. I hope that it was worth the wait for those of you who have been requesting it or just have wanted to see it for a while. My commiserations, of course, go to Igor Belanov. I still feel quite bad about that, but someone has to come last, and, being the worst Ballon d'Or winner is quite an enviable status in of itself. As I say, thank you all very much as of watching. Hit the like button if you did enjoy today's video. I hope that was the case. Let me know your thoughts down below in the comments, and feel free to subscribe and turn on notifications for HITC Sevens, and you can also find me on either Twitter or on Instagram via the username @HITC Sevens on both, should you wish to do so. And why wouldn't you?